If you just, look at the major global crises we're facing, climate collapse, accelerating pandemics, huge inequality.
Right.
They aren't isolated events. They're all interconnected, they're compounding, and the really critical part is that they're accelerating.
Way faster than our ability to respond.
Exactly. But here's the core problem we're digging into today. The institutions we have, the ones meant to manage all this, they were built for a 20th century world.
Precisely. And those
Yeah.
models, they have these constraints just baked right in, and now they're actually hurting us. We're talking about governance that depends on people being in the same room, super slow diplomatic pacing,
Hmm.
and a model where legitimacy comes, well, almost entirely from nation states.
And that old setup creates what the source material for this deep dive calls a speed mismatch. The crisis moves way faster than our response. So today, we're unpacking a really ambitious proposal to fix this. It's a blueprint for a virtual United Nations, or VUN.
Yeah, this is a comprehensive plan, really, for a digital evolution of global governance. And our mission today is pretty specific. We're going to unpack the design architecture of this VUN, look at the structural risks, because there are always risks, and the hard-coded anti-capture mechanism.
The guardrails, basically.
That's exactly. The system's designed to keep it independent and effective. We're really looking at a system designed to operate at 21st century speed.
Okay, so let's start with the basic idea. The proposal says that for global governance to actually work today, it has to get past four huge structural constraints. What are they?
Well, these are the four barriers the VUN is specifically designed to just obliterate. First, you have that speed mismatch we mentioned. Crises need answers in days, maybe weeks, but our institutions take months or even years to make a decision.
We saw that very clearly recently.
We did. Second is limited participation. Global conversations are often locked away behind, physical borders and elite diplomacy. It excludes citizens, it excludes youth, and that just cripples legitimacy.
And that points straight to the next issue, which is a very practical one.
It does. The third constraint is severely fragmented data and coordination. You have global agencies, NGOs, whole nations, all operating on different platforms, speaking different data languages. It just slows everything down.
And the last one?
The last one is the continued physical dependency. These expensive, resource-heavy, in-person forums. That physical barrier creates a kind of systemic inequality. It's much harder for smaller nations or organizations to even get a seat at the table.
It also creates a massive blind spot, doesn't it? The documents argue that any governance that doesn't have mobile access is, by its very nature, exclusionary.
Absolutely. The majority of the world gets online through their phones. So this isn't just about faster meetings. The core value proposition of the VUN goes way beyond just digitizing what we already do.
So what is that value then?
It's what they call multidimensional value creation. So you're looking at always-on digital diplomacy, scalable, multilingual citizen participation, and real-time data sharing that anyone can access.
And that creates value in a few key areas.
Right. You get huge political value because you're enabling a global dialogue that actually goes beyond the usual state elites. And, maybe most importantly, you build trust value. The processes and decisions are transparent and fully traceable.
Transparency really is the currency here. Now, we have to make something crystal clear because it could be, politically charged. This VUN is explicitly designed as a non-state, non-binding body.
Yes.
It's not trying to replace the actual UN. It's not a shadow world government.
That's a non-negotiable boundary condition in the source material. It very clearly positions the VUN as a provider of downstream execution and tooling.
Okay, downstream execution. What does that mean in plain English?
Think of it like this. The traditional UN that's upstream, it handled the big treaties, the high-level diplomacy.
The legislation, basically.
Exactly. The VUN doesn't touch that. Its sole focus is on producing actionable outputs for local implementation. Things like standardized playbooks, procurement templates, and public dashboards.
So if a city wants to roll out a solar grid, they don't have to start from scratch.
They just go to the VUN for a proven open-source template that follows global best practices. That clear scope tooling, not treaties, is what's meant to prevent it from getting bloated or overstepping its mandate. And to maintain that sharp focus on execution, the VUN is built around 6 domain councils. And these aren't just, academic subjects. They're defined as type I leverage domains. Meaning they're the systemic areas where one small, smart intervention can produce these disproportionately huge global benefits.
Okay, let's list those 6 domains because they really define the whole scope of the project.
Sure, they are. Energy, education, health, biodiversity, governance, and security and resilience.
So all the big ones. The planetary scale challenges.
Exactly. The ones that need everyone working together. And the makeup of these councils is very intentional. It's not just diplomats.
Right. It's designed to maximize both legitimacy and the actual capacity to get things done.
Precisely. Each council has 3 core groups, and they rotate. You have citizens, who bring legitimacy. Then you have experts for competence. And finally, stakeholders, who bring the execution capacity. Think NGOs, cities, civil society groups.
Let's pause on that citizens part for a second. The documents use the term sortition.
They do.
Are we talking about just randomly picking people from across the globe to weigh in on, say, energy grids? How does that work?
It's a great question. And it's not purely random. Sortition here means randomized representative sampling, but it's filtered.
Filtered how?
Through demographic and technical requirements. The idea is to democratize competence. You're pulling from a global pool of vetted people, often youth leaders or people who are usually marginalized, and you're using tech to make sure you have geographic and gender balance.
So it's a way to break the reliance on the usual political class.
That's the intent. And critically, the terms rotate, no permanent seats. That ensures constant renewal and total transparency about who is providing the input.
Okay, so this is where it gets real. The focus is on tangible things, deliverables within the first year. What are some specific outputs that aren't just another report?
Yeah, the output has to be something you can actually use. So take the Energy Council. Their plan is to deliver a Global Grid Readiness Index, the GGRI,
Which is?
an open composite score, always updated, that tracks grid reliability, how many renewables are being used, and how resilient it is to shocks. They also produce open-source city-scale energy playbooks,
Actual blueprints.
actual standardized procurement blueprints for any city to adopt.
Okay, so energy is about infrastructure tools. What about health and governance? What does execution look like there?
For health, they're tasked with building an early warning signal hub. It would aggregate data in real time to detect outbreaks, and it would be paired with transparent preparedness compliance scores for different regions.
To avoid the data chaos we saw during COVID.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the Governance Council is working on trust architecture. They're developing a global trust and transparency index and an open norms library.
So best practices for things like AI ethics or data privacy.
That's it. Standardized open source frameworks for these critical new areas. The point is to create technical, replicable standards, not to get bogged down in endless philosophical debates.
So we have the structure, we have the scope, but any structure is only as good as its defenses. Which brings us to the elephant in the room for any global body institutional capture. The source material is very clear that the biggest threat isn't some external enemy, it's capture. By big donors, by private interests, by ideology.
And that capture almost always shows up first as funding leverage.
Where the money dictates the agenda.
Right, so to fight this, the architects built in a hard-coded separation of powers. It's called the 3-chamber model.
Okay, tell me about these 3 chambers. How do they check each other?
They're designed as 3 totally independent sources of authority. First, you've got the member state chamber, the MSC. That's your traditional government representation. Second, the citizen and civil society chamber, or CSC. That represents the public, NGOs, expert networks. And third, the crucial one, is the independent oversight chamber, the IOC.
The ISC sounds like the judiciary branch.
It basically is. It's home to auditors, an ombuds office, an ethics board. It provides constant external scrutiny. And here's the key rule. Any major governance change, any shift in the mandate, requires a supermajority across all 3 chambers.
So a hostile actor couldn't just capture the states or the tech companies?
No, it makes an attack incredibly expensive and slow. They'd have to corrupt 3 distinct independent bodies at the same time.
That's a strong structural defense. But let's circle back to the money. Let's say they implement donor concentration caps. No single donor gives more than, say, 5% of the budget. What's to stop a big state or corporation from just using 4 or 5 different foundations to funnel money and get around the cap?
That is the exact attack vector they have to preempt. And the defense has multiple layers. First, that cap is set really low, which makes it impractical to use proxies to control the whole budget. Second, there's an absolute ban on earmarked donations.
Meaning?
A donor can give to the General Operations Fund, but they are explicitly forbidden from dictating a policy outcome. You can't pay to sponsor the result of the Health Council's work on preparedness scores.
You can help keep the lights on, but you can't buy the research outcome.
You got it. And the final critical layer is what they call radical traceability. All funding sources, no matter how small, have to be publicly disclosed on an open, real-time ledger. That's the tool that helps you spot those potential proxy funding networks.
Radical traceability. I like that term. What does that mean in day-to-day operations?
It means that every single part of the system is built with transparency by design. Any significant decision, whether it's defining an AI norm, using a data vendor, or picking a pilot city, automatically generates a public receipt.
A public receipt, like for a transaction.
Yes, exactly. Think of it as a transparent chain of custody for that decision. And the receipt has to clearly document who decided what, when did they decide it, what data was it based on, and what were their declared conflicts of interest.
So the goal isn't just to be transparent.
It's to make transparency easily auditable. It's much harder for corruption to hide when there's no institutional fog to hide in.
Right.
But even with all these defenses, the proposal has this really sobering section on the risk map and what it calls the contrarian analysis.
Right.
The strong, realistic reasons the VUN might fail, even if it's perfectly designed.
You need that dose of pessimism for any serious governance project. It lists 5 big risk categories, but let's focus on the 2 critiques that really get to the heart of its viability. What's the first big fear?
Contrarian #1. This just becomes another talk shop. This is the fear that even though it's designed for execution, the incentives will drift. It's always safer and easier to publish a long report than to run a risky, real-world pilot.
Reports don't step on anyone's toes.
Exactly. They're easier to fund, less likely to cause friction. So the question is, how do you fight that deliberation theater?
And the answer is?
A mandatory, rigid framework for action. They call for a strict ship cadence, a measurable output every 3 months, 1 toolkit plus 1 KPI update plus 1 pilot case per council per quarter.
Period.
And budget increases are tied to how many people actually adopt their tools, not how many reports they publish.
That definitely moves the accountability needle.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the second, maybe even more fundamental critique?
Contrarian #2. Non-government means no teeth.
The enforcement problem.
Right. If the VUN can't force anyone to do anything, why wouldn't a powerful state or company just ignore its standards if they're inconvenient?
Yeah, you can't sanction a city for not using your energy playbook. So how does it build what the source calls soft power teeth?
By creating non-government infrastructure that makes adoption the smart, easy choice and non-adoption the costly one.
For example?
Issuing third-party certifications, setting procurement standards that big development banks adopt, routing funding through outcome bounties. So if the Health Council creates the gold standard for vaccine logistics and major NGOs start requiring it, a country that doesn't comply will suddenly find their own logistics are more expensive and less reliable. That's real leverage without a treaty.
The leverage comes from becoming the trusted global standard. Okay, one last risk. Decision paralysis. Just bureaucracy. Managing 3 chambers, 6 domains. How do you stop it from grinding to a halt?
The mitigation for that is pretty elegant. You have a 2-speed system, a fast lane and a slow lane. The fast lane is just for playbooks, pilots, tools, the things that need speed and iteration. The slow lane is for the foundational stuff.
Like norms and ethics.
Exactly. The things where you need careful deliberation and political buy-in. You don't want AI ethics rushed, but you need that early warning signal hub deployed yesterday.
Yeah.
And to make sure the VUN doesn't get distracted by, shiny but low-impact projects, everything has to pass through a formal selection rubric. It's a scoring system, 1 to 5, across several criteria.
So this is the mechanism for keeping it disciplined. What criteria get the most weight in that scoring system?
3 are absolutely critical. First is type I leverage. Does this project move a keystone variable for the planet, like decarbonizing grids? If it's just a minor local fix, it scores low.
Okay.
Second, cross-domain spillover. Does it create benefits in 2 or more domains at once? For instance, does improving digital access, which is education, also improve health data collection, which is health?
And the third one, this seems to go right back to the no-teeth problem.
It does. The third is the non-state adoption path. The rubric asks, can cities, NGOs, and companies use this thing right away, even if governments are stalling? This focus on bottom-up execution means the VUN isn't just sitting around waiting for political consensus.
And all of this needs to be tracked publicly, which brings us to the mandatory KPI dashboard.
Which has to be public in real time. It tracks universal things, like the percentage of traceable funding or the adoption count of their tools. But it also gets very specific.
Like what?
The Biodiversity Council, for example, tracks the Nature Integrity Index and the number of hectares of verified restoration. The Education Council tracks a digital access benchmark. The data is the proof. It shows whether the VUN is creating real-world change or just more bureaucracy.
So after laying all this out, the structure, the risks, the defenses, the measurement, what's the final verdict? The implementation plan? Do they say, let's launch the whole thing at once?
Absolutely not.
Huh.
The verdict is a very loud and clear test. The proposal strongly advises against a big full-scale launch. Instead, it recommends a focused 6-month pilot.
Just one domain council to start.
Just one. Probably energy, health, or resilience. And you launch with just 3 pilot cities or regions to really measure if the anti-capture stuff works and what the real adoption rate is before you even think about scaling up to all 6 councils.
It's a call for slow governance to enable fast execution.
That's a perfect way to put it.
When you boil it all down, the VUN is really an attempt to hard code 21st century democratic values, transparency, real participation, accountability directly into the digital architecture of how we coordinate globally. It's an admission that the platform you use determines the kind of governance you get.
It is, and the documents argue that the alternative to evolving our institutions in this way is, frankly, watching them become totally irrelevant. Coordination will just shift to proprietary corporate platforms or informal opaque networks. So if these structural defenses, the donor caps, the independent oversight chamber, the open ledgers, if they really are the keys to preventing the obsolescence of global cooperation, it leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to consider. What single defensive measure should be implemented first to win the most public trust right out of the gate?